What's up, everyone? My name is David Arroyo, and as you've noticed, I am in a new office space. I recently completed a move, and so I'm dead tired. You might see it in my face, maybe not. But anyways, in this video, we're quickly gonna cover line art renders in Blender. So how to add line art to your 3D models, environments, and such. So we're gonna look at freestyle line render and grease pencil, plus the line modifier for the grease pencil. So what do you say we dive right in?
Okay, so let's quickly discuss the line render and the grease pencil. There are two different ways of doing this. So if you want to add line art, so first of all, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the scene, because actually you can recreate the scene very easily. These are not my assets. These are things that I got from the internet. I will add a link in the description below for both assets. So one is the actual spaceship right here, and the HDRI background, that one I got as well. I think one was from TurboSquid, the asset was from TurboSquid, and the HDRI background came from CubeBrush. Okay, so with that said, let's see. Let's add some line art to this, right? So what you do need is a camera. So I've added a camera. If you don't know how to add a camera, Shift A, and you add a camera right there. Okay, so press 0 on your numpad and it will go into your camera. So I've chosen this particular shot. And let's quickly go over how you can add lines to your 3D art, right? Because it helps so much when you're doing certain types of designs in concept art, or if you're doing comics specifically. If you're doing comics, then line art really helps you a lot. And Blender actually can do a lot of that hard work for you. So let's have a quick look. So in your render settings right here, render properties, right, you can go down and there's this one tab called freestyle, right? Just click that on. It's very simple. When you click it open, you'll just have your line thickness and you'll have a freestyle, right? What does this mean is that if you're going to render this, you will be able to see here your resolution. I have it at 4K, so that's 3840 by 2160. And then all you have to do is press F12 to render out this image plus line art. So I quickly pressed F12. There we go. First, you're going to see the image of the spaceship. And in the top here, you're going to see freestyle view map creation. So if we wait a little bit, you'll be able to see that it's not done because it says save. So when it says save as, then it's done. Okay, so you just have to wait. Don't worry if you don't see the lines yet. See, now it changes to visibility computations. This takes a little bit longer because it's a very heavy object with tons of details. So it takes a little bit longer. This is done on a MacBook Pro, the latest one. And so the more detail you have, the longer such a render takes. But it's not very long. I'd say 30 seconds max or something of the like. See, now we have the line art added to this. Okay, and once you've got this, you can go to image and you can save a copy, for example, and you can put it anywhere, right? So I've already done that for all the other ones to save time. So I'll show you in a second. But basically, that's the very simple way how to get line art onto your work, right? Onto your 3D objects. Now, what if you want the line art separate from the 3D object, like as a render pass, so that you can separate these two? Very easy. You can go here to your layer properties, right? And you go down, 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 and here where it says your freestyle, because you have your freestyle turned on, you have as render pass right here, right? So you just click that. Now, when you do an F12, you will have this as a render pass, right? So I'll quickly do an F12. Okay, so this is what happens when you finish a freestyle line render that is on a separate layer, like a separate render pass. So you won't see your lines on your screen. You will have to go here to combined, and when you click on freestyle, there are your lines right here, right? Now, there are 0 modifiers on these lines so far. We can add details or modifiers, as you will, to change the thickness of your lines, the type of strokes that you want. There are a lot of different modifiers, and we'll have a look at a few. right? But the same here, you can just save a copy, and as a PNG will work just fine. Give it a name, and then you export it, and there you go. You've got your lines separate from your 3D. Okay, now, what you might also want to do, like I said, was to modify a few things on your lines, right? How do we do that? Right, so still in the view layer properties, you go down, you go to freestyle line style. Yeah, you click on that, you expand it, you scroll down all the way to the bottom, and then here you got different type of things that you can work with, right? You got your strokes, your color, your alpha, your thickness, and on all these things, you can change a million different things, okay? I mean, it's very, very extensive. I'll just show you a few interesting modifiers that you can play with, like for example, the thickness of your lines, right? So when you click on thickness, right, you see here modifiers, it changes to add modifier. And you can say, for example, one that's a long stroke, right? So you scroll down, and here, for example, you can say, instead of linear, you can say, do one with a curve, right? So you scroll down again, and here what it says, it means that, wait, let me quickly change this. So you drag in the middle, you drag it all the way up, and you drag the one in the corner all the way down until you have a graph that looks like this, right? And what that means is that your thickness at the beginning of your stroke is 0, and at the end of your stroke is also 0. But in the middle, it's nice thick, like in a Photoshop brush that has these nice sharp endings. That's basically what this does, right? So that's one thing that you could do. If you want to add another modifier, very easy. You just go here down again, and you say, for example, this is also a good one, a distance from camera. You click on that, and you scroll down. And here now you have a distance from camera, meaning that the lines that are closest to you will be rendered thicker than the lines that are further away from you. Now, the easiest way of using this, because it uses the camera, so you have to have a camera, right? We have a camera selected right here. I'm going to select just anything that is within this camera, right? So that I have a selection. Then you go to fill range by selection, right? So you just click that. And now it has calculated for you the distance that you want to work with. Now press invert, right? And so that the lines are thicker on the front and thinner on in the distance. And then once you've got this, you can do another render. Let's see, am I forgetting anything here? Oh yeah, before I do forget, if you do a render and you don't see your lines, there's one way of fixing that. You can fix it either here in your line thickness, right? So instead of 1, you put it to 3, for example, or 5, or whatever you will. And let's see, let's go back, or you can, let me scroll all the way down, or you can play here, right? You've got your value minimum and your value max. You can put your value max to 3, to 4, to 5. You have to play around with it until you find the right setup that you want, okay? And that is basically your setup for your freestyle line renders and the different type of lines that you can create. Also, before I do forget, yes, there are the edge types. You can basically say which type of edges do you want to render, right? You've got your silhouette, your borders, your contour, your crease. This is all still within the view layer properties under freestyle line set. So all the way at the bottom, here you can choose, right? The edge mark, that is basically, if I get out of here and I go to edit mode, I'll just highlight anything. Let me see if I can highlight something. So for example, this object, I'm going to tab mode so I can edit mode. And if I want to, for example, say this edge, so I'm going to select this edge, for example, or a few of them, right? And then I right click and I can say mark freestyle edge, right? So if I do that, you will see that they are now green, right? So you have these green lines. And when you do edge mark here, when you select that, it will also render out these lines. Okay, so that's quite important. That's what allows you to render out. Now, don't forget, every time you do a render, it's going to render whatever you see here, okay, from your camera. It's not going to render this. Okay, so if you want to render this, you have to change your camera to this position and then render it again, right? Okay, let's get out of edit mode by pressing tab, deselect, and let's see, I think that's the basics. I mean, there's so much more I could tell about freestyle line art, but instead of me doing it, I'm gonna refer you to a good buddy of mine, Paul. I never get tired of watching his videos. He is an expert at this type of stuff, and if you want to do a very deep dive, I strongly recommend you to go to his channel. Here you have a quick view of it. I will add the channel in the descriptions below, so you can just click on it and visit it and subscribe to his channel because he makes awesome content. So then the second way of adding line art to this. So let's now take off the freestyle. So if I take this off, that means everything we just did is still there, but it's not going to apply it anymore when you render, right? So the other way of doing things is by using a line modifier for grease pencil, okay? And the grease pencil will also need a camera. So I'm quickly gonna get out of this view. Let's quickly turn it around. Really absolutely love this model, by the way, and the HDRI. They're really, really good. So also please visit these creators. Again, descriptions, the link is in the descriptions below. Right, so Shift A, and you add a grease pencil, you add a stroke, right? Just a simple stroke. If the stroke is too big, no problem. Just quickly move it to the side. Let's make it a whole lot smaller. You might want to scale it down because you're going to make lines based on this stroke, right? So I'll scale it down to something like that, right? Or at least I think that makes sense. I don't know. Normally, that's what I did. The first time I did this, when the stroke was still big, the lines were very thick. So I just scaled it down to something acceptable for the spaceship, right? And once I have that, right, so now that I have my stroke, I'm going to take the stroke out of my collection, by the way, put it in scene collection. Okay, so here, this is the collection, and my stroke is outside of it. Important for in a second. Right, with my stroke selected, I'm going to go to modifier tab, right? So modifier properties. I'm going to add a modifier. You can add many different modifiers to a stroke, but we are going to focus on line art, right? So what we're going to do a source collection, right? We're going to say, what source do you want me to draw on, right? And we're going to choose this thing, right? So the spaceship. The spaceship is the collection. You can also do an object or a scene. A scene, it will use the entire scene. Object, it will only do one particular object. So for example, if I were to select this thing, right, which is the core front, then it will only do the line art on the core front, right? So that's one of the things that you can do. Let's go back to the stroke. So select the stroke again. But what we're going to do, we're going to select collection, right? And we're going to click this and then click on collection. So anything inside this collection is going to do a thing. I'm going to take my light out of it. I don't think it even affects the light, but I'll just take it out anyways. And the camera out of there. There we go. All right, so back to the stroke. Here again, your edge types, just like with the freestyle line render, you can choose which edge types you want, edge marks and so forth, your creases, and then you're going to have to target a layer, right? In this case, you're doing lines, so just select lines, then target material, you click on that, and then you can choose what color material you want. These are some basic ones. You can add materials, and that's another tutorial because you can make materials also for your grease pencil, but we'll get to that. Now, because this is quite a big file, or the object, it will take a while. Okay, so I'm going to click on it, and it's going to take a little while, so I'm just going to speed fast forward. Okay, so here we are. We have the line render made here, and what you're going to notice, you can already see a noticeable lag. What you're going to notice is it did something strange, right? There's some parts that are done, some parts that are not done. Why would that be? Well, it's very simple. This is just because it only focuses on the lines that the camera can see. So if I were now to, see, I'm just going to deselect. Now you won't have the issue. You can move it very easily, right? But you see that some parts don't have the lines and some do, right? And the cool thing here is that you can see this on your actual 3D viewport, right? That's quite amazing. Now we're going to go into our camera, and the camera does see all the lines. Okay, so the camera doesn't have that issue, right? So here all the lines are perfect. Now, what happens when we move the camera? So we have camera to view. What happens when we move the camera, right? If I were to move the camera, let's see if it even does that. See, it is, yeah, it's slowing down and it's recalculating the lines again. So that's what it's doing. And that is why it's almost impossible to work in this manner. You can, I've seen on Paul's website or YouTube channel, I mean, something about baking the lines. So that is quite interesting. And then you can speed up your workflow considerably, right? So again, if you want to do a deep dive into that, I strongly recommend you visit his channel and look into exactly how that is done. Also notice that all this stuff is still relatively new. Okay, so the line art modifier for the grease pencil is, yeah, quite new. And so there are still things that might improve over time. Okay, this is the first iteration. It might speed up over the, you know, in the next version of Blender or the upcoming versions in the future. Just know that. But it's a really, really awesome tool, and you've got a lot of things you can do with it, right? So, and also here, like I said, you've got your style, your occlusion, your chaining, all that type of stuff. See, so now the camera has changed. And if we were to leave the camera, see, now the lines changed as well, right? To a different angle, right? So now you have these ones, and it will look perfect from the camera itself. Okay, so from the camera angle, it will always be perfect. As soon as you zoom out, it will do sometimes these strange little things that, again, there might be a way of fixing that. I don't know. Check Paul's channel. Maybe he has found a way to do that. But there you go. So that's the interesting part about the line art modifier. Which one is better? That's purely up to you. I personally think that after having done some research on this one, I think that the line art modifier will most likely be the future in the direction that we're going, because you can do a lot of interactive stuff with it. So you can view it in the viewport, which is already amazing, right? That really helps quite a bit. And there are a lot of things that you can do with it. So I would recommend to, yeah, use both, see which one works for you. The freestyle line render has been has been around for quite a long time. So I'm sure you'll find a lot of great stuff there. But this one works just as fine and has some added features that I think over time will improve, will get faster, you'll add, like I said, you've still got all these things here like style, the thickness of your lines, the occlusion, you got a lot of stuff here, right? And also don't forget in your render settings, because the reason why things look the way they look here, I have ambient occlusion on, bloom, your shadows, set them to 2048 in case you want things to look the way they look here. And when you don't want to see them anymore, just turn them off, right? It's very easy. And then you can look around again and you just turn them back on here and they're back, right? So it's quite interesting. Both methods I like very much. And then there's one last thing that we're going to watch, but that we're going to do on a different file. Okay, so for this part of the video, we're going to look at the grease pencil. I'm not going to do an extensive tutorial, just the basics so that you understand how to use the grease pencil and so forth. So the very first thing we're going to do is get rid of this cube, right? So by simply pressing X, delete, or delete key on your keyboard, because we are not going to need the cube. And we're going to start drawing with the grease pencil, right? So for that, we need to create a grease pencil first. So Shift A, and we create a grease pencil. You can do a blank, stroke, monkey. Let's start with a blank so that I can explain everything from the beginning. Okay, so when you do this, you have in your outliner, you've got a grease pencil. And when you think like, okay, I can start drawing now, well, no, not yet, right? You have your mode, so you've got your draw mode, but you won't do anything, right? So if I start drawing, it says no available frame for creating stroke, right? So we need to set up a few things first, right? The grease pencil needs a material. So we're going to go here down to the materials tab. Also, it might be worth mentioning that I'm using a Wacom. It doesn't matter if you have a Cintiq or a Intuos, or it doesn't matter which one, or it doesn't even have to be a Wacom. It could be just a drawing tablet, basically, right? Any drawing tablet will do. It doesn't need to have a screen. It's useful if you want to do very precision work, but I'm using the Wacom Cintiq, but again, you can use any tablet available, but I do strongly recommend you do this with a tablet. Do not draw with a mouse. It's very complicated and it's not as precise. And you won't have pressure sensitivity and all that type of stuff. Right, so you go to material, you have to create a new material, right? And that's our material. You can call it whatever you want, but this is your material to draw with, right? So it's a stroke, and you can also choose for it to be a fill. You can give it a color and all that type of stuff, right? So we're just gonna leave it at black. Very simple, but you have to do that first, right? Here above it, right, you have your layers, right? So if you press plus, you have a layer and so forth. And on this layer, right, with this material now selected, you'll be able to start drawing, right? So if we now go, if I start, let's see, let me use another color just so that this is very clearly visible. Let's just go for white. Then it's clearly visible in the, right. So if I start, let's see, if I start doing this, you start seeing lines, right? If I move around, you're going to see that. That's your grease pencil. I'm going to Control Z that, undo. I'm going to make thicker lines so that it's easier to see. So if you press F, you hold F, you can make thicker lines, see? And that's how you can do just some basic lines. So what do you need? You need a material, first and foremost. You can make other materials if you want. You do a new one and you say, for example, oh, now I want one, some color to it, right? So say some reds or something, right? So now you've got the red material, and when you start drawing, that's what you're going to see. Now what happens, look, see? It's not all in the same direction. If I start drawing here, and I'm going to start seeing things on this side, right? Now, how does that work? First of all, we have a few things going on here, right? We have here up, we can choose what type of brush we are working with. You can import brushes and stuff and make special, we're not going to go that far. I'm just going to give you the absolute basics. If, for example, I were to use a pen, the ink pen, see, I have to modify the thingy again. You can do that either by pressing F, hold F, and drag left, right. And then you've got that, right? So you've got all these lines now. And that's basically it. That's the real basics. Okay, you can do a lot of things here. Again, all your different type of settings for your strokes, your cursor, really. But again, we're not going to go into that. The most important stuff, let me undo all this so that we have a clean canvas to work with, right? And with the ink pen, let's see, yeah, that's fine, right? So what we're doing now is we're drawing on view. View means that wherever we are looking at, that's where we're drawing, right? So if I'm looking at it from this angle, that's how we're going to draw. If I start doing this, then we're going to, from this view, then we're going to start viewing on here. Now, it's not always that easy to work that way. So what you can do, you can choose to draw from the front, from the side, from the top, and there are many different things. So here, for example, we're talking about origin, but later on, we're going to talk about also stroke placement and that and so forth. But say, for example, we wanted to draw from the X and the Z, right? So meaning that, look, if I draw now, it's going to be perfectly on the X-axis, which is this, okay, that's the X-axis. I mean, the Z-axis, sorry. And the X-axis is this one, right? So this is Z and this is X, right? That's the axis you're drawing on now, right? So let's undo that. And for example, here, if I wanted to, let's say, up, let's do that, right? So this is a cube, right? Or let's pretend it is, right? And now let's draw it on the other side, right? Let's do the Y and the Z. And if I do this now, perfect. You have to be careful when you do that, obviously. The best way what you can do, if you really want to get it right, you can just, while you're scrolling down, you press the Option key or the Alt key, and this allows you to go into this line, right? So I'm not going to do straight lines. I'm just quickly by hand. See, and then we got that part, right? Now we can also draw on the other side, right? You can do that through, let's see, if we were to draw here and you wanted to do it specifically on there, look, there's something that can help you with that. You have something called a grid. Where is this thing? Well, I'm drawing the canvas, right? We have a canvas here. And we can say that when you're drawing on your canvas, right, you want the canvas, for example, to be offset. And for that, you can go to your layers, properties, all the way down, viewport display. You go down, here's your canvas, it's hidden. So that's the only downside of it. But you can scale it up, for example, or do an offset first. All right, we're gonna offset it a bit and offset it a little bit on the, we're gonna give it some subdivisions as well, like let's say 8, right? So you can make it thingy, and then you can also make it bigger, by the way. If you want a bigger canvas, like let's say 3 by 3, right? So you've got your 3 by 3, and then here, for example, you can really work with precision. If now, for example, you were to select this, right, then it will use the, oops, am I on, no, I have to go back on this one. Yes, on the line, is it? And if I were to, now let's quickly go here. Oh, sorry. Let me see why the hell it's doing this. Oh, of course, it's because it's circular. Let me do the grid. Yes, perfect. And now it's perfectly aligning to the grid, right? It's using the grid as a guide, right, to get your drawings done. Again, if you want perfectly straight lines, you can just press the Alt key and it will go to left orthographic or right orthographic, wherever you are. And then you can quickly make these modifications. Now, the good thing about this is now you can also edit all this stuff, right? You press the Tab key while you're drawing. So wait, let me go. Why is it not doing? Oh, I was pressing the wrong one. Edit mode, right? And we can select the individual strokes, right? So quickly going to zoom in, and these ones we can move, right? We can move this. We can select this whole bunch here, right? And say, okay, I want to move that one. Press G for moving, and we can move these things to wherever we want, right? To get things in the right place, right? And like this, you can get a lot done. Right? You can draw a lot of different things into different places. Quite useful, basically, right? And I've seen that before, but honestly, I can't find it now. But it's useful, that canvas. If you don't want to see it anymore, you can remove it. All these things you can edit. Like I said, you can edit the individual parts. You can see when you go here, you've got all these tiny little dots. So if I were to do this, right, and you can modify these, move them around, right, anywhere you want, and it will modify your. Then you can add all kinds of stuff. Like if you do this, for example, then the curve will bend a little bit depending on how you've got your setup, right, with proportional editing. So with that said, that's just some basics for the. I'll quickly make another material so you can see what happens when I do a fill. So let's quickly do a fill, for example, some red. Right, so now I've got a fill, and if I were to get out of edit mode and let's do a fill, we've got a fill with a thingy. So now, meaning on this axis, look, if I, oops, it's still on here. If I were to do this, see, it's going to draw a line plus fill it, right? And of course, it was in the wrong axis. Here, up. And you can fill it up. You can remove the stroke at any point in time, right? You can just choose. You can do a lot of different things, right? But it's very useful, this type of stuff, just to get you going. Okay, now with this said, there are many things you can do, right? So as you've noticed, you can do different drawing planes, but you can also draw on different things, right? So one thing I want to show you is if you have, let's see, let's quickly bring back let's go back to object mode, quickly bring back anything. like a cylinder, for example, right? Let's move this one a little bit to here. And let's go back to our grease pencil and let's draw. And let's say now we want to draw on the surface, right? So here, now, if I were to draw, if I remove the offset because there was an offset, let me do it with this one. Right, so I've got, let's go here, surface, and let's do a offset of one maybe. Okay, let's quickly draw. See, so you can, now what it does basically is it follows the surface. So if I were to do this, see, it follows the surface. Very useful, right? And you can set an offset. So now there's an offset if you do 0, right? That means there's no offset, so it's going to draw into the surface, right? So you choose how far you want that offset to be, right? But it's quite important to know that and have a look into that and all that type of stuff. See, this one is cutting into it, so that's why having an offset here could be useful, right? So you can, if you go over here and here, it will just follow it for you because it's drawn on top of it. You see, as you've noticed, it's not perfectly on top of the geometry. It's like floating above it because of this offset, right? Okay, so why am I showing you this gibberish here? Because it does look like gibberish at the moment. Because this is just the theory, the basics, right? Once you have this down and you've set up your things, again, you can do you can do straight lines, you can do curves, all that type of stuff. Again, if you want to deep dive into this, I keep forwarding you to Paul. That guy is awesome. I repeat it, and have a look at his channel, and you will really, really get a very deep dive into how the grease pencil works. He has a really, really cool course on that, which I strongly recommend you have a look at. He talks about it on his channel as well. Costs a little bit of money, but it's so worth it. So have a look. Okay, again, so what was I going to show you? I wanted to show you this. All right, so let's not save. Right, this is something that it's a demo, a class demo that I do with my students, and it basically shows. Let me take off the grease pencil. Right, so it's a simple sculpt, right? So you first have a sculpt made by me. It was done quickly during the class, maybe during 30 minutes or less, and then basically what I did was start drawing on top of it, right, with the grease pencil. So if I select it, right, I already have my settings here. Like I said, I've got my material and I've got my layer that I created, line art. You can create many layers, by the way. And so with that all selected, once you go to draw mode, right, you can start working on this. Let me add some lights, right, and let me also stop making this transparent. Let's zoom in a bit, all right. And here, basically, the good thing about this is that you can add all kinds of detail now, right? So now, for example, if I wanted to, see, I can add all kinds of detail and say, I want, for example, here on his hair, see, it's on surface and it has a tiny little offset. So I can draw and add all the details that I want, right? Like, and just keep going until I've got everything that I need. And like this, I can create really, really cool art. Right? I can say like, okay, here I want the hair strands to go like this. And this is very useful because, you know, have you ever tried drawing a face from many different angles without 3D? It's tough. It's difficult because you're gonna get your proportions wrong very, very often, right? And here, the good thing about this is that you can just draw. Let me undo that. You can just draw and, you know, create all these lines in grease pencil, right? You're just creating your grease pencil lines and create your art basically, right? You can create your drawing as you see fit, as I'm doing right here, right? Quickly add some lines here and there. And you can do this for ages, right? You can keep going and going. It's basically what you're doing is drawing in 3D, right? And you can modify all these, like I said, you know, in edit mode and keep going, right? So interesting for concept art, but also interesting for comics, right? You got characters and they have certain things going on, right? I'm just doing this very quickly, up. right? Here as well, you can kind of like that Borderlands feel, right? Where you have like some cross hatching going on in some parts. You can do all that stuff here, right? And it adds really cool effects, right? So once you got that done, let's see what else. Can add this little thingy here, right up. Oh. See, and that's the whole thing, right? Once you got that done, you can, for example, remove your, let's remove his eyes first and his face, right? So what you got left is some line art, right? And now there are a few ways of doing this. You can, for example, if you go to, let's quickly go to the camera. Is there a camera? Yeah. Right, so let's say you don't want to see all that stuff. There are a few ways. You can play around with your clip end. All right, so this would be maybe a meter or so or less. It would have to be very short, this clip end. Let's see. If I didn't want to see his hair, or it would have to be in the camera, I believe. Sorry. Not here, because in the camera it will do a different thing. Yeah, exactly. Not here. Let us undo that. Clip in. Let's bring that back to 1,000 or 10,000. But either way, you can do it here as well. If you just bring it here to 1, for example, right? I mean, or bring it up. See, you only see what you want. So let's take out the eyes, take out the face, and here with your clip, you can choose the lines that you want, right up to here, and then you rotate around. It's only going to show you what you need, right? And then you can do a screen grab or whatever you need. That's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it, let's bring, I think it was at 1,000. The other way is through the camera itself, obviously. But you can also just go to your character. And if, say, for example, you go to your world, make that purely white, make that all white, right? And let's play around with the material now that we have for our face. The face. Okay, there we go. Your face, instead of a principal BSDF, just make it an emission, sorry. Do the same for your left eye. All right, just material 2, which is an emission. And here also emission. And no matter what, you will always get the lines that you need, right? And if you want perfectly clean white color, you go to color management, down, and instead of, yeah, it was already, okay. Normally it's on Filmic, put it to standard. And let me see, where's my camera? Let's do this, and let's press F12, for example. There you go, and then you're going to see just your line art. So that's it. That's another way of playing around with lines, and you can obviously export them as well separately. So that's the really useful thing that you can do. There are many, many ways of doing this, but that's what I wanted to show you in this part of the video.
And so there you have it. I hope that you liked the tutorial, and I hope that it inspired you to create your own line art on your own 3D objects, whether it's for concept art, for a comic, for whatever you want to use line art for. And as usual, if you like this type of content, you can always leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care, guys.